Good to have you with us on this Tuesday edition of Ed Schultz News and Commentary. I got to start with a clarification today. If you follow my work, you follow me on Facebook, and over 300,000 people do, I post a lot of stuff. And yesterday, I guess you could call it my man cave. I was out at the hangar, and I was taking a nap, and I woke up and I saw this story about how Ben Carson wants security now, not because he's a presidential candidate and he's drawing more attention, but because he wants security because he thinks that progressives view him as a threat, so he needs security. And I did a little bit. In fact, this is what I did.
So let me get this right. Ben Carson says he needs security protection because progressives view him as a threat. May I clarify, from my perspective, and I think I speak for millions of lefties across America, we don't view Ben Carson as a threat. We view him as a gift.
No, I think that's pretty good for a guy who just woke up from a nap. I mean, I was not awake 60 seconds and I saw that, and I took my camera and said, I got to do this. That was my reaction. Now, from time to time, I'll read the trail. So I read the trail yesterday on Facebook after we posted that, and somebody said Ed must have been smoking some really good weed. I don't mean to disappoint you. I'm not a weed smoker. I've never been a weed smoker. I'm an impulsive guy. And so I posted that, having some fun with it. And I do think I'm speaking for millions of lefties in this country. We do not view Ben Carson as a threat. We view him as a gift. And I hope I didn't disappoint you with that news. Maybe my eyes were a little too squinty because the lights were on and I happened to fall asleep even with the lights on for just a few minutes. So I woke up and did that. I hope I didn't hurt your feelings by responding on Ed Schultz News and Commentary that way. Thanks so much for paying attention. It got quite a few views, by the way. All right. Let's start out with the Bush campaign, because there are a lot of people in the mainstream media who thinks that this is on life support behind the scenes, but we just can't see it. So I want to go to Mitch Caesar this morning, chairman of the Broward County Democratic Party, former Florida Democratic Party chair as well. If there's anything shaking in Florida, Mitch Caesar knows what's happening, and he knows a lot about the Bush legacy in the history in Florida. Mitch, good to have you with us today.
Good to be checking in with you, Ed.
All right. So behind the scenes, the story is that the Bush people can't believe that they're actually in this mudslinging contest with, of all people, Donald Trump, and they're trailing. And so now we're going to get Bush 2. In other words, a new Bush on the campaign trail. Maybe Bush pissed off or whatever, but he's really going to let him have it now. At least that's the narrative that's out there. Your response to what's unfolding and what his next move is?
Well, the Bush, obviously met with mommy and daddy and big brother because the campaign's in big trouble. I guess he realizes low energy is not in for this cycle. He's in big trouble, and I think some of the trouble is his own making. He's running around. He's saying now, he said today or yesterday rather, that he could be doing a lot of other things other than just sitting around and being miserable, in effect, running for president. That's not the phrasing of a happy warrior. I view it as someone who's really basically pissed off.
Yeah.
Because I think there's an entitlement issue in his head.
Oh, I got to address that. It just pours off him. He thinks because his daddy and his brother were president and he's a Bush, I mean, he could be able to just steamroll right to the nomination to be the next president of the United States. The sound cut you're talking about is this one right here. Here it is.
If this election is about how we're going to fight to get nothing done, then I don't want any part of it. I don't want to be elected president to sit around and see gridlock just become so dominant that people literally are in decline in their lives.
Okay, hold it right there. That is a very interesting statement, and we'll play the rest of the cut in a moment. Does that mean that if he's president of the United States that he is not going to allow all these filibusters in the Senate, that he is actually going to work with the Democrats, and that he is going to try to get something done with the ideologue who's going to be the new Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan? What do you make of that approach? That's almost something we haven't heard from Jeb Bush. What do you make of it?
I think it's a very well played strategy. He's trying to show that he could be the best general election candidate. He started off the campaign as the guy to beat. Now he's constantly losing. He's saying, I want to reach across the aisle. If I'm not going to be of any use, I don't want to do this. I think it's really interesting, though, because it's also a frustration. It's almost like a Saturday Night Live skit where they have the players, playing Bush and somebody else. And what it's really about is, the Bush actor might look at the camera, and it's really about saying, I can't believe I'm losing to these guys.
Yeah. That's really how it's coming off.
Absolutely. And that's why he's re-strategizing with, in Houston with the family. And I think that's all about reassuring donors. Because if the money stops, he's dead immediately.
Well, what's his old man or his brother going to tell him? I mean, the people either like you or think you can get it done or they don't. Now, the irony in all of this is that, Jeb Bush is not stupid. I mean, he's a pretty good politician. He was, he's somewhat of an ideologue, no doubt. He pushes an agenda and whatnot, but he's not incompetent. What do you think he got out of his brother and his father?
I think it soothed the donors. It's a typical play in a lot of these campaigns where they show the commercials that are going to be coming up so the donors feel important, look at an advanced piece. They talk about their polling. They talk about him being the strongest person to be positioned as the nominee and match ups with Hillary or whatever. And that is indeed literally what they did in Houston. But that's typical and done by every campaign for Senate or governor or president across this country. I think what is happening is he realizes this is much worse than he thought it would be. Remember, he was the guy who said, I want to do this with joy.
Yeah.
And my joke was, joy has left the building a long time ago.
Yeah, it's just like whatever, Mitch, it's almost like whatever he's saying, people just don't want to hear it. I mean, there is Bush, there's Bush fatigue. It's just like, buddy, you're not saying anything we want to hear.
Well, you're right, and there's a total shutdown. That's what's so interesting. The Republican Party and Fox and conservative radio have sold a bill of goods to Republicans for so many years that it finally was absorbed. So now that it's been absorbed with all the crazy stuff from birthers to everything else, now they're demanding a candidate that fits the crazy narrative that the RNC and other outlets have been selling. What did they expect? They didn't expect it would be absorbed. Well, now they're going to reap, what they've sown. And that's why Trump and Carson consistently, or the real far-right folks, are consistently polling over 50%, some polls over 60%. It's their own fault.
So is it Jeb Bush even worthy of Donald Trump attacking him? Listen to Trump go after Bush and mock him.
Here's a guy who wants to run our country, and he can't even run his own campaign. So Bush has no money. He's cutting. He's meeting today with mommy and daddy, and they're working on their campaign. Okay, they're working.
I mean, it's just, I got to hand it to Trump. That's entertaining. It's a new wave of political communication. It's a no back down thing, and it's basically saying, this guy Bush is a joke. Do you realize what a joke he is? I mean, that's the audio that I got out of Donald Trump on that. So he's trying to put the final nail in the coffin. Mitch, is it going to work?
I don't think so for a different reason. One thing that's very smart is we know Bush is very, very thin-skinned politically. He's out of practice. This isn't even a sharp elbow. This is just a little poke here and there to get a reaction, maybe goad him into a back-and-forth situation. My advice for Bush, and I'll say this, I've not said it anywhere before, I think Bush, based on polling and the way it's going, should skip Iowa. I don't think he has any chance. A new poll just came out, shows he's underwater. When they asked which person could do you feel comfortable with, he was at 41% positive and 51% negative in Iowa. The question is, who could you see or not see supporting?
Well, it's interesting. The latest report is he's going to spend a lot of time in New Hampshire and South Carolina. So,
and I think he has to do that, and perhaps the most potent is, and it's his own creating, he better spend a lot of time in Florida. He is running third or fourth in Florida. And, the Florida legislature made it a winner-take-all state at his insistence to help him. If he loses Florida, South Carolina is not going to help him because it's not only going to be a huge hit to the inevitability, which no one actually even believes now, but numerically, arithmetically, counting delegates. A lot of delegates in Florida, third biggest state in the country, winner take all. If a Trump or Bush if a Trump or Carson wins, he's dead. And even worse, if Rubio wins.
All right. We'll have you back to talk about Rubio on another day. Mitch Caesar, always a pleasure. Great to have you with us. Great political. You bet. You bet. Our friend in Florida, Mitch Caesar. I'm going to play 4 sound cuts for you, which I think cut right to the chase about who Bernie Sanders is and what he's all about, what his campaign's all about. And the reason why I'm going to play 4 sound cuts, and it's going to take a little time, and I want you to consume them. Pay attention to this. Because the mainstream media paid it no attention yesterday. None. Bernie Sanders walked the walk again, this time in New York City with the Communication Workers of America, who have been trying to get a contract for over a year. When we come back, former President Larry Cohen joins us. Communication Workers of America, Alliance for American Manufacturing, BioGreen Clean, to the iSave team bring you Ed Schultz news and commentary. We're right back. Hey, folks, you've heard me talk about BioGreen Clean. I'm going to show you right now on my airplane just how tough this is. I want you to keep in mind, chemical-free, 100% plant-derived, biodegradable. It is the safest cleaner that you can get, and it's the most effective. Go to our website, wegoted.com, or go to biogreenclean.com, www.biogreenclean, and order today.
It's time to continue our conversation about mechanical insulation. Mechanical insulation is for the piping systems in our nation's commercial and industrial facilities. Facility owners are burning up billions of dollars through the lack of mechanical insulation on these piping systems. Call the iSave team. Insulation saves America valuable energy, and this team of energy conservation specialists is shovel-ready to save you money. Visit iSaveTeam.org to have a specialist give your plant an energy audit.
We perpetuate a culture of crime all the way from Wall Street right down to the main street in our hometowns. It's worse than it has been since FDR took control of the problem and said we can't count on industry taking care of the American labor. They probably have already engaged into some type of criminal cover-up, and the law prohibits the government from even doing anything about it.
Catch America's lawyer Mike Papantonio on YouTube at youtube.com/GoLeftTV.
Subscribe to the Ed Schultz podcast today. Simply log on to iTunes, search for Ed Schultz, and click the subscribe button to have the show delivered to your preferred listening device daily, free of charge. Rate and review the podcast and tell us how we're doing. More details at wegoted.com.
There's always that political calculation. That's what this story is all about. Good to have you back with us on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. Every time some politician or someone who wants to represent the people sees union workers out there or workers trying to unionize, they run from them. For some reason, it's bad political theater. It's too much of an absolute of what side you're on. You can't dance around it. You can't fence ride it. And it's just, for most people in politics, it's just not a good place to be. That's what's so refreshing about Bernie Sanders. This is a habit for him. Here's the story. Some 40,000 employees, led by the Communication Workers of America and the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, they are currently in this major contract battle with Verizon. And they are accusing the telco, this major company, Verizon, of retaliating against workers who were trying to unionize in the workplace. Now, we know how big Verizon is. I'm a customer of Verizon. I'm okay with their service. But you know what I'm not okay with? The way they treat their workers. And the fact is that they've been trying to unionize. And there was a big rally, and they've been walking the picket line for days in New York City. Guess who was with them yesterday? Guess who spoke at a rally? It was Bernie Sanders. Now, this was not on the mainstream media because for some reason, I guess this just isn't a good story. Maybe Verizon just spends too much money with the big boys. But this is what Bernie Sanders had to say at the start.
Middle class in this country is disappearing, and what Verizon is doing to their workers is exactly what has got to be fought if we're going to rebuild the American middle class.
Now, not only does Bernie go around the country talking about the middle class, not only does he support proposals and bring up legislation that will do just that, he walks the walk in front of the cameras and in front of these workers. Larry Cohen joins us, former president, Communication Workers of America, and now, of course, he is with the Bernie Sanders campaign as a surrogate. Larry, good to have you back with us.
My pleasure.
This is the realism that is fueling the Sanders camp. That's what I would say. Your thoughts?
Absolutely. This was in front of the major Verizon Wireless store. The Verizon Wireless workers in Brooklyn organized more than a year ago, can't get a first contract. 39,000 others, as you said, their contract expired over 100 days ago in both CWA and the IBW. And there's Bernie, right in front of the store, saying right to the top management of the company, you have over $100 billion market cap. The CEO makes $20 million a year, and you're not building out high-speed internet in the rural parts of your footprint, and even in parts of the cities like Buffalo and Binghamton, no high-speed internet, and Baltimore. And, which side are you on, Verizon? We expect a lot better out of the management there. Not afraid to say it. I don't know that another presidential candidate has ever waded into these kinds of battles.
And that's the uniqueness of this. I don't recall any presidential candidate ever wading into the picket line and stepping up and saying stuff like this about a contract. Here it is.
It is not acceptable to me that when workers form a union and negotiate for an entire year, they can't yet get a contract. That's not what democracy is supposed to be about. That's what rotten labor law is about. And we're going to change that. When a union sits down with the company, they are going to negotiate a first contract. And they are not going to fire workers. We know how hard it is all over this country for workers to form a union. We know that employers fire organizers trying to create a union. They know they stall and stall in terms of a first contract, and that is why we have introduced legislation that says you're going to pay a pretty heavy price when you fire a worker trying to organize a work.
I mean, that is going to the mat with the workers, and that is change you can believe in. Labor law, we're going to change it. I mean, this is, you know what? None of that played on any of the mainstream media anywhere yesterday, which I think speaks volumes to how powerful it is. How are workers responding to that? What do you were out there. What do you make of it, Larry?
Yeah, I was there with him and had the honor of introducing him, actually. Right before him, Bianca Cunningham spoke, who's a Latina woman from one of the Brooklyn regions. She's lead organizer inside. And you had it all in this. And let me say this about Bernie. As remarkable as it is that he said all that, he said it without a single note. He knew the story. He learned the story.
Yeah.
He can do it just because, it's Bernie. This is what he is. And so not only is he the only one who's ever been out there, maybe Jesse Jackson was in '88, I don't know. But certainly for decades, maybe ever. But he also doesn't need to read a speech. There's not even a note in front of him, let alone a teleprompter. And earlier, yesterday, I saw him on The View, totally different, with Whoopi Goldberg, whooping it up. No notes there. And then another meeting, no notes. Everything he says, this is what you see, is the authenticity, because it's him. He doesn't have to practice it. He doesn't have to memorize it. He doesn't have a teleprompter. He stands with working people in this country, and he knows what those fights are because he's been in those fights his entire life.
And he has no problem at all taking it to the CEOs. Here it is.
All over this country, Verizon is a metaphor. You got corporate America making huge profits, their CEOs getting huge compensation packages, and then with all of their money, what they do is hire lawyers in order to make it harder for workers to survive in this country. Workers need decent pay raises. They need decent health care. They need decent pensions.
Well, I just want to ask this question, and I know you're a surrogate for the Sanders campaign, and I know you're a believer in Bernie, and no one has led and fought for workers harder in this country than you, Larry, and you've made a decision that Bernie Sanders should get the nomination and he should be the next president. that being said, where's Hillary? I mean, isn't this what the middle class in this country wants? And would these workers possibly come to a point where they would ask Hillary to step out on the line to see if she would? Because that would get her on record about what she would do for labor law, what she would do for these workers that are threatening the workplace, what she would do to companies that don't do anything for over a year. I mean, I think this really is a benchmark moment in this campaign when it comes to the middle class and workers in this country. I mean, can't every Democratic candidate walk that line the way Bernie is with no notes and take it to the House? Listen to what he said about Wall Street. He connected it to Wall Street.
What this campaign for president is about is saying to corporate America, you cannot get it all. That when worker productivity is skyrocketing, you gotta pay your workers decent wages. You gotta respect and negotiate with workers for decent contracts.
You know what? Larry Cohen, we did not hear this audio in 12. We didn't hear it in 08. We didn't hear it in 4. We didn't hear it in 2000. When was the last time we heard this kind of talk?
I don't know if we've ever heard it. And that's why he calls it political revolution. It's from the workplace to the community. It's voting rights. It's get the big money out of politics. He puts it together. And that's what makes him so amazing. And as he said at another meeting I was at today that wasn't a public meeting, at the minimum, because people like to challenge him, he's not going to win. At the minimum, we're building a permanent base that will go to that convention, and I still believe we can win the nomination. But either way, we will carry those values, and we're not going to back down. Yeah. And we're going to demand, as you just said, that Democrats don't talk with us, don't just talk with us, they walk with us. They got to move from talking with us to walking with us. Whether it's union workers, whether it's climate change, whether it's student debt, we had enough of the talk.
Yeah.
We need them out there with direct action, showing where they stand.
Well, I'd like to see Hillary Clinton get out there for the good of the party, for the good of the movement, for the good of the middle class. I think that she could do an awful lot. I think that Martin O'Malley could do an awful lot. I mean, where is it just going to be one Democrat that's going to be doing this kind of stuff? I mean, this is the heart and soul of the middle class in this country, fair wages. This election, I'm going to say it 1,000 times on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. This election is about jobs and wages. That's it. And then, of course, you've got Wall Street. Then you've got all the campaign finance reform and all this Citizens United stuff. But when it comes down to workers, those folks who can't get a voice in the workplace, can't get a contract, nothing's more important to them than that. That's the deterioration of the middle class when we allow this kind of garbage to take place in the workplace, and we can't get leaders in the political arena to stand up for these folks the way Bernie did yesterday. I thought it was outstanding. I really do. If this is what Bernie meant in the campaign when he said nobody cares about your damn emails. This is what people on the line. That's how I took it, Larry. Your thoughts?
No, you nailed it. That's exactly what he meant. And he didn't get to finish the sentence, but that's exactly what he meant. And so what we do care about, Hillary, or any other candidate running for office, is which side are you on? Will you walk with us? Will you take on the Wall Street banks? Will you take on a company like Verizon when they're wrong? And when they're right, we should be applauding them. Mm-hmm. But when they're wrong, will you take them on? Or are we supposed to settle that you're neutral and the Republicans want to gut us? Well, you know what? We're fed up with the neutral, and we know they want to gut us. But we are now going to demand that elected officials and people running walk with us and stand with us, whether we're students or environmentalists or union members. They need to walk with us, not just say we're neutral. That makes us better than the other side.
Larry Cohen with us here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. Always the best, my friend. Keep up the fight. Thanks so much for your time. Thanks for being out there today.
Thank you.
This is Ed Schultz News and Commentary. We're back with a closing word after this.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania to the auto factories of Michigan to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
The Ed Schultz Internet broadcast is brought to you by the Ring of Fire radio show. Listen to the Ring of Fire weekends on radio stations across the country. Get more information and the news of the day at ringoffireradio.com.
Thanks for being with us on this Tuesday edition of Ed Schultz News and Commentary. I want to be very clear to all of you who spend a few minutes with me every day at WeGotEd.com, RawStory.com, and RingOfFireRadio.com, and of course, follow me on Facebook. Last week when Hillary Clinton was in front of the House Select Committee on Benghazi, I complimented her. 11 hours plus. It was an outstanding job. She was presidential. There's no question about it. She had tremendous poise, had total command across the board. And I think that's great. I think what Bernie Sanders did yesterday for those workers who won a contract with Verizon in New York City, I think that was great. There's a lot of good things that are happening on the Democratic side while the Republicans are jabbing one another. I'm disappointed in the Clinton campaign starting this narrative that Bernie is going negative. No, he's not. He's not negative. He doesn't have to go negative because what he's doing standing out with those workers is nothing but positive. It's the other candidates that have to say, yeah, I can do that for working class folk. Yeah, I'll do that for the middle class as well. Yeah, I'll get out there and get skin in the game and go against the major corporations. I mean, the banks on Wall Street are too big to fail. Let me tell you, Verizon is too big to criticize in the mainstream media circles because they spend a ton of money on advertising. But who is out there in front of them getting after it? Bernie Sanders. So just as it was a great week last week for Hillary Clinton, I think it is a great start of a week for Bernie Sanders because he never stops defining who he is, what he believes in, and where he wants to go. And isn't that what the progressive movement is all about? So those of you out there who think that I'm anti-Hillary, no, I'm about the issues. I've always been about the issues and always will be about the issues. If we're going to put up with this constant income inequality in this country and this spiral out of control income for the people at the very top, then I guess we should just quit, right? But nothing's lost until you give up, and I'm not giving up. And I am going to accentuate the positive in the progressive movement. The Republicans are way behind the curve. All they care about is tax cuts and deregulation, and that's given us nothing but problems. We're short on the Treasury, even though we've cut spending like crazy. We can't take care of our infrastructure. They want to get rid of health care. They want to get rid of minimum wage. I mean, the list goes on and on. So I think there's a lot to champion in the progressive movement in this country. And I think that Bernie Sanders, as Hillary Clinton last week, standing up to the Republicans and certainly the political attack that she faced, she was a champion. I think that Bernie Sanders was a champion yesterday, and it's all good. This is Ed Schultz News and Commentary. We're back tomorrow.